You're not just tired. You're drowning in a silence no one can hear. It's not your body that's giving up. It's your will. The weight you carry doesn't live in your muscles. It lives in the space between your thoughts, in the hollowness of waking up and not knowing why, in the quiet ache of doing what needs to be done while something inside you quietly withers. And still, you show up. You brush your teeth. You go to work. You scroll through faces and voices and headlines pretending to care, pretending to be okay. But there's a difference between being tired and being emptied. The first you fix with rest, the second with truth. You're not lazy, you're not broken, but maybe, just maybe, you're grieving. Not for someone else, but for the version of you that never got to exist. That grief is invisible, because the world only notices when you collapse, not when you begin to fade. So you keep fading, quietly, elegantly. You laugh in the right places. You answer emails. You check the boxes of a life that on paper seems fine, but inside, it's colorless, blurred, heavy. There's a scream, not loud, not violent, but constant. A muffled echo that bounces off the walls of your chest. And every time you try to speak it, your own mind says, "Stop. No one wants to hear this, not even you." Carl Jung once wrote, "The unlived life is a sickness from which one can die." And here you are, alive in body, but somewhere between silent mourning and spiritual starvation. Because this isn't just exhaustion, it's betrayal, a subtle self-betrayal, performed every day in the name of obligation, in the name of being realistic, in the name of survival. You've learned to silence the parts of you that dreamed, that loved, that asked too many questions. You became functional. But at what cost? Let me ask you something no one dares to say. What if what you call laziness is actually mourning for a life that never began? What if your soul is not lazy but starved? And what if this collapse, this quiet exhaustion, is not weakness, but your last attempt at honesty? If these words feel like they're describing you, it's because they are. Not the public you, not the you that answers, "I'm fine," but the real one, the one no one sees, the one that's still here, somehow, still listening, still hoping that maybe there's more. Let's go there. Somewhere along the way, you became someone else. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that anyone could point to and say, "There, that's when it happened." But slowly, quietly, you began to perform a version of yourself that didn't disturb anyone. That fit in, that adapted. At first, it was a defense. Then it became routine. Now, it's a prison you forgot how to leave. You smile at the right moments. You speak the right language. You blend in like a ghost wearing your own skin, and no one notices the rot, because rot doesn't scream. It spreads in silence. Exhaustion doesn't always come from doing too much. Sometimes it comes from doing what isn't yours, from wearing a mask so long it fuses with your face. You're tired because every day you wake up and play the same role, a role you never chose, a role written by expectations, fears, and a lifetime of trying to be enough. The soul doesn't get tired from effort. It gets tired from inauthenticity, and maybe you've been surviving by imitation, living to be seen but never truly witnessed, performing competence, performing confidence, performing joy. While inside, something screams, "This isn't me," but the performance doesn't stop. Because stopping would mean facing a terrifying question. If I'm not this, then who am I? You fear the collapse, so you keep going. You fear the silence, so you keep speaking. You fear being seen, so you hide behind function. There's a name for this: emotional performance. It's not about lying to others. It's about lying to yourself so well, you start to forget the lie is there. You're not exhausted because you're weak. You're exhausted because you've been strong in the wrong direction. You've been holding up a version of yourself that no longer fits. And the weight of pretending is heavier than anyone will ever understand. Ask yourself, not out loud, but in that quiet space before sleep, Are you truly living, or just maintaining the appearance of someone who is? There's a kind of emptiness that doesn't look like despair. It looks like productivity. It wears the costume of a busy life. You wake up, you do what needs to be done, you check the boxes, you fill your calendar, you keep moving, but inside, something vital is missing, and you can't name it. That's the trick of modern survival. You can function like everything is fine while quietly bleeding purpose. You don't fall apart. You fade, and the fading is so gradual, so polite that no one asks what's wrong, not even you, because you have responsibilities, because people depend on you, because meaning, whatever it once was, got replaced by urgency. You produce, you achieve, you respond to emails, you answer questions with a smile. But there's a question that lingers after the lights go out. Why does none of this feel like enough? The truth is, meaning doesn't vanish in dramatic ways. It doesn't explode. It dissolves. It hides behind the noise, behind the rituals of adulthood, behind the mechanical repetition of days that all look the same. And in that numb repetition, your soul forgets how to ask for more. Productivity becomes an addiction. Not because you're ambitious, but because doing more distracts you from feeling less. The more you do, the less you have to face what's missing. And what's missing is not success, not admiration, not progress. What's missing is connection, depth, a reason that makes the pain worth it. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Man is not destroyed by suffering, but by suffering without meaning." And if you've ever felt that hollow ache, that quiet panic in your chest while pretending everything is fine, then you know exactly what he meant. There's a difference between being busy and being alive. And the tragedy is, most people won't realize the difference until something breaks. But you already feel it, that dissonance, that soft collapse behind the smile. You're not failing, you're just starving for a kind of meaning the world forgot how to offer. There was a moment, you may not remember it clearly, when feeling became dangerous, when expressing what hurt only made it worse, when your silence protected you more than your truth ever could. So you adapted. You distanced yourself from the fire inside, not to escape it, but to survive it. It began with small denials, a shrug instead of a scream, a smile instead of a collapse. And over time, you stopped noticing just how far from yourself you had drifted. Now you laugh in group chats, but cry in the shower. Now your body goes through the motions, but your soul, it's somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere far. Emotional anesthesia isn't numbness, it's self-preservation. It's what happens when you've been hurt too often with no space to heal. So you learn to feel less, to expect less, to need less. But what began as a defense became a cage. The people around you think you're fine because you don't fall apart. But inside, you're stuck in a silent freeze, not quite broken, not quite alive, just paused. The first time you felt something deeply and were punished for it, with rejection, with silence, with abandonment, you made a decision, not consciously, not logically, but emotionally. You decided it's safer not to come back fully. So now you live with half of yourself turned off, not because you want to, but because turning it back on feels like inviting the pain to return. And still, the cost is high, because the same defense that protected you from sorrow also numbed your access to joy. The cage is not made of steel, it's made of habits, of half-felt feelings, of rehearsed smiles and unfinished thoughts. It's made of a lifetime of saying, it's okay, when it wasn't. You didn't fail, you adapted. But maybe now, that adaptation is suffocating you. It's remarkable how much pain can hide behind two words. I'm fine. You've said them so often they no longer mean anything. They've become a reflex, a shield, a language that signals safety, not truth. Because if you ever stopped saying it, if you ever said what's actually real, the whole structure might collapse. And you're not sure you'd know how to rebuild, so you function, you go to work, you laugh at the right moments, you play your role with such quiet precision that even those closest to you don't see the fracture lines. But the cost of that illusion is immense. You've become skilled at appearing okay, but inside, chaos brews, slow, silent, and corrosive. You keep yourself together not because you're healed, but because the alternative feels unbearable. And maybe that's the real fear. Not dying, not breaking, but being seen while you unravel. The truth is, I'm fine has never meant fine. It means I'm overwhelmed, I'm fragmented, I don't have space to explain, I don't want to be a burden. It means I've stopped hoping someone might notice. You hold on to external control, your routine, your image, your rhythm, because somewhere deep down you fear that if one part slips, everything will fall. But what if it's already falling? Slowly, silently, behind your eyes and beneath your skin. The soul doesn't scream like the body does. It whispers, it numbs, it waits. Until one day someone asks, really asks, "But are you okay?" And in that moment, a door opens. And part of you wants to say it, to admit it, to collapse into something honest. But the other part, the one that survived all this time, tightens the mask and replies, "I'm fine." Because that's what you've always said, even when it wasn't true. Especially when it wasn't true. There are moments when the thought appears, uninvited but familiar. The fantasy of disappearing, of walking away, of vanishing without explanation, not to end your life, but to end the performance. To stop pretending that you're okay, to stop carrying a self you no longer recognize, to stop being what everyone else needs you to be. And in that urge, that quiet, desperate wish to disappear, there is truth, not weakness, not madness, but truth. Because when your soul is suffocating, escape isn't cowardice, it's instinct. It's the final alarm of a self that has spent too long in silence. You don't want to die, you want peace, you want stillness. You want to stop explaining yourself to a world that never really listened. This is the psychology of collapse, not because you're fragile, but because you've been strong in ways that no one saw. You've held your breath for too many years. You've built a life that looks fine on the outside, but erodes you from within. And somewhere inside you, a voice whispers, "Stop, just stop. Let it all fall. Let the masks crack. Let the effort cease." Not because you failed, but because continuing would mean losing yourself completely. You imagine disappearing not to escape responsibility, but to reclaim something sacred, the right to feel, the right to rest, the right to exist without justification. Maybe you've never said it out loud. Maybe you're ashamed to even think it. But know this, the desire to vanish is not always a sign that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it's the clearest message your soul can send. I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to survive this way. I want to feel alive again, or not at all. And that message, however dark it may seem, is not the end. It's the beginning of something honest. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. There's a strange moment that happens right before change, right before you take a risk, start again, or finally choose yourself. You hesitate, you pull back, you sabotage. Not because you don't want the new life, but because part of you still remembers the pain of the last time you tried. There's a familiarity in failure, a cruel comfort in collapse. You know how to survive disappointment, but freedom, real, uncertain, vulnerable freedom, that's terrifying. Because what if you try and nothing changes? What if you become everything you dreamed of and still feel empty? So instead of leaping, you delay, you doubt. You destroy the very thing you've been starving for. You procrastinate, you distract yourself, you drown in noise. And to the outside world, it looks like laziness. But deep down, it's mourning. It's grief for all the times you hoped and were hurt. It's the wound of belief turned against itself. Self-sabotage isn't a flaw. It's a memory. It's your soul saying, "We've been here before. It didn't end well." So you stay in the pain you know, because at least it's familiar. At least it doesn't lie. The irony is brutal. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of healing and realizing the damage is still there. You're afraid that after all the effort, after all the tears, after all the change, you still won't feel whole. So you don't begin. Not because you're lazy, but because beginning means facing a terrifying truth. That maybe you never hated your life. You just hated how little of you was allowed to exist inside it. There are things you've never said, not out loud, not even to yourself. Memories you've blurred, feelings you've silenced, questions that burn in the back of your mind like forgotten letters, never sent, never opened. And maybe that's why you feel so far from yourself, because there's a version of you still trapped in the unspoken. When nothing outside makes sense, the only honest place left is a blank page. Not for poetry, not for performance, but for collapse. Write as if no one will read it. Write like your soul is unraveling and language is the only witness. Not to heal, not to fix, just to feel. Name the things you've swallowed for years, the losses, the envies, the quiet regrets. Name the betrayals you committed against yourself just to be loved, just to belong, just to survive. This isn't about journaling, it's not therapy, it's reckoning. Because sometimes the only way to end a lie is to finally tell the truth, not to someone else, but to yourself. Let the words be ugly. Let them be incoherent. Let them be cruel. Because the real you, the one beneath the masks, beneath the silence, has waited long enough to be seen. This diary is not a solution. It's a mirror. And sometimes, to change your life, you have to see yourself naked in it. So ask, not gently, not politely, but with brutal honesty, what is dying inside you right now while you pretend everything is fine? There comes a point where even silence becomes unbearable, where pretending no longer protects, it poisons. And in that moment something breaks, not loudly, not publicly, but deeply. It's not a breakdown, it's a return. Because what you've been calling exhaustion might actually be mourning. Mourning for the parts of you that were never allowed to live. Mourning for the truths you buried beneath performance. Mourning for the soul you silenced just to be accepted. You were never lazy, never weak, never broken. You were exhausted from being someone you're not. And now, maybe for the first time, you're ready to stop lying to yourself. That's not a collapse. That's the beginning of something real. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You've resisted your pain, resisted your emptiness, resisted your truth. But the soul doesn't want perfection. It doesn't want applause. It wants honesty. Even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. Because in that hurt, something sacred lives. Not the pain itself, but what it reveals. The parts of you still breathing beneath the rubble. The echo of a self that hasn't given up, even if you have. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering someone ancient. The version of you that existed before fear, before shame, before the world told you who to be. Yes, you got lost. But the truth is, you can still choose to stop walking in circles and come back to yourself.